You're listening to the Believe in Giants podcast with two-time Super Bowl winner Carl Banks and the voice of the Giants, Bob Papa.
And we welcome you to another edition of Believe in Giants, presented by FanDuel. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks, and we're talking about the season opener. And obviously the Giants went down to Washington and they lost. You know, Carl, when you look at this game, I don't know if I've been more disappointed just in sort of the energy and everything that we felt around training camp in the preseason. And look, if the Giants would have lost the game, 28-23, but it was close and it was back and it was fourth and you don't make a play here, or you don't make a play there. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if you were watching this game yesterday and we were calling it, it felt eerily similar to last year. That was very scary.
Well, it was triggering to a lot of.
Triggering is a good word. Very good.
It was triggering to the fan base that even though they said that, looking at the schedule, they kind of expected the team to go, 0-4 or 1-3 or something like that. This wasn't the type of start to the season that they were expecting. Wasn't the start of the season that I expected, just based on the energy around the team and, legitimate praise in my opinion. This, it was a triggering performance, and we can get into where I think, some things really went wrong. And I'm not here to push the optimism, but I'm just going to give some observations on some things that are easily fixable. Others, they've got to reevaluate how they go about the process, especially on the offensive side of the football. And I don't know whether it's, particular emphasis on certain plays or not. But, and I'll just jump right into it. It felt like they were force-feeding Malik Nabers the football. It's not because they don't have receivers that can catch the football. And people were saying, well, they won't respect, the number 2 Slayton or any of the other receivers because they're not very good. We wouldn't even know that based on yesterday. Slayton had 1 target. And it just felt like they were force-feeding Nabers. Now, it's a question that has to be addressed in 3 parts. 1, was it an emphasis from coaches? 2, was it a decision by Russ? 3, was the decision made by Russ based on his inability to even get a second read based on the offensive line? All are legitimate questions because there were plays that were there to be had that Russ never looked at. And if he were to look at them, the question becomes, did he have time to make throws? Now he was under duress a lot. So those are legitimate questions that can and should be answered. The thing that I don't really like, and I know Malik Nabers is a very competitive young man, and he does want the football. I don't like when every time they go to commercial, it's on him. Either he's got a scowl on his face or he and the coach are kind of going back and forth where it may not really tell the whole story, but it just, it gives you the impression that it's all about him. It was not all about him. but he dropped some key passes that difference makers in these types of games have to make.
Yeah, I mean, let's go to that, Carl. Well, first of all, like, going to break and everything else, right? This is a national telecast. So he's the story that they're focusing on. They're going to show him every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he controls it or the Giants control that part of it. But you're right, difference makers. I'm thinking about this. The Giants need a difference maker. And look, Malik Nabers is a fantastic player. But due to some of Washington's own poor decision-making, notably at the end of the first half, and Jaden Daniels was not extremely accurate yesterday. They missed some things that they had. This was still a game at 14-6. And
going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, when you throw a ball at the end of the third quarter down the right sideline and lob one down there, your best guy's got to catch it. He's got to catch the ball. I mean, he missed it and hit him in his shoulder. That energizes the team if you make that big play. And I'll use DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday Night Football, who made an above an X's and O's play. Now, Baltimore wound up losing the game, but it energized that team, right? And there was also the one in the end zone when they had the 3rd and goal and the 4th and goal where all hell was breaking loose. I didn't see it because it was all the way down the other end of the field. I'm trying to look at the monitor to look at it, but Howard Cross is like, got to catch that ball. Like that breathes life into an entire team. If you feel like, man, we're getting our butts outplayed, we can't really stop them, but they've made some mistakes, and voila, we're within a point of the lead at this point. Changes everything.
Yeah, and that's how football goes. I mean, you will have opportunities if you hang around long enough. And I think Malik Nabers is a fantastic player. I think he's competitive as hell, so I don't have a problem with him wanting the football. But in doing so, there has to be a level of football self-awareness. When I say football self-awareness, is that in the moment, every play is not routine. And in the moment, this opportunity may not come again. I've got to make a play here, right? And no, they weren't all perfect. And your quarterback was under duress. But there were some Malik Nabers type plays that needed to be made, right? And again, like you said, you don't control what is happening with the TV when they go to break. He's their guy. I mean, he's the Giants' biggest name. But I would love to see him, and the scowl on his face may be his disappointment and him not making plays as well. But they need their difference makers to make difference in these types of games. And then the other part is in this offense as a whole just did not function. When you have in one of our followers, N.A. Delsey, said they were 7th and goal and ended up with a field goal, like 1st and goal, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. I mean, Washington kept giving you opportunities. You got to make them pay. That was the biggest disappointment for me, when you couldn't get the ball in the end zone. And that's the part, aside from everything else that folks said looked the same as last year, that's the part that needed to change. Find a way to get the football in the end zone. What are the plays? What are your assignments? What can be better between 1st and 7th down? They have to be better at that. I mean, you can't excuse that. When you're down there and points are a premium, you got to be able to get something, not 3. they penalized themselves into giving you 3 more downs. And it was just like, okay, well, what is this? And so that's a question that they have to evaluate how they're going about it. Now, I'm going to put this little caveat out there. Dan Quinn knows the Giants very well. He's had tremendous success against the Giants.
He's 5-0, counting his time as the Falcons head coach. He's 5-0 against the Giants. Never lost to the Giants. And as a DC with Dallas, he was killing them.
Right. So you factor that in, but that shouldn't have come as a secret to Giants staff. They know that he knows them. The other aspect of it is he knows the quarterback well. He knows what bothers this quarterback, and he was able to implement his game plan. He's an excellent defensive coordinator, but it's football. You got to make the adjustments. He knows you well, but you should know that he knows you well and have some things to counter that. So the offensive part of it was the areas that I really have questions about, Bob, that, you can look at and say and ask legitimately why or why didn't something happen when you had basically one other receiver, and Wan'Dale Robinson was basically a running back yesterday because not all of his, but a bulk of his passes were, third and must-haves or second down, like run plays. They throw it to him in the flat and he'd get first down. So that was that. But they never threatened Washington down the field. And it's the weirdest thing I'm hearing. Well, they didn't throw to Slayton because he's not any good. That's not true. Like, if they're rotating coverage to Malik Nabers, then you got more than him. But, you gotta, if you want to pull coverage off of Nabers, then you start going towards the other guys. And, by the way, Theo Johnson, you got to make a catch. You can't drop footballs that were going to you were either going to get close to scoring or you were going to score going in. You can't drop those. These are the plays in these types of games that you've got to make because your opportunities are not coming. And you got to be able to keep your defense off the field a little bit too. I mean, they tried to hold the rope, and we'll get into that, but there were just too many things offensively that, you walked into this game and you thought, okay, they've got legitimate talent, which they do at tight end. I don't discount the preseason games. I just think this was an awful game offensively. So we're going to see going forward.
The thing that concerns me, Carl, is, we're all hoping and waiting for Andrew Thomas to get back. Who knows when he's going to be back? He's working his way back toward being back. But the interior of the offensive line, it was a big problem yesterday. Washington was 30th against the run last year. Now they bring in Kinlaw, who did nothing with the Jets last year. Mm-hmm. Dietrich Wise is a tried and true veteran. But that interior of the offensive line made Kinlaw, Payne, Dietrich Wise look like Hall of Famers yesterday. They were all over the place. And when you have a quarterback that's short compared to the average standard-sized quarterback, and it's not like Russell Wilson's height has changed between now and when he came into the league, but he is a little bit older. You can't allow that kind of pressure inside. You can't function. And then I think what happened to Russell Wilson is what happens to every quarterback that we've ever seen under the sun. When they start to get to pressure, they feel the pressure. And there were a few times where he imagined pressure, where he was in there and he all of a sudden, and I remember thinking it was a play going from our left to our right because it was kind of, we're in the back corner of the end zone, so we're kind of watching it on this angle. And I'm like, No, he actually has. I'm thinking in my head he has time, but he started to react as if he was going to get smashed, and it's the same group there that's been there, and like they have to be better, or they have to figure out somebody else who will be better, or else this will continue to be a problem. Not being able to run the football and not keeping your quarterback clean.
So Andrew Thomas hasn't been there all year, so there's no waiting for him to come. When he comes, he's got to ramp up anyway. But the group that's been there started camp together. So they collectively have to be better. I talked about Hudson and what a camp he was having. He struggled yesterday. Now, Dan Quinn, again, he knows how to attack this Giant offense. He knows what's going to bother this quarterback. He did that. My thing now is, okay, how do you respond as an offensive line? You felt great about yourselves coming out of camp as well. But this was an offensive performance that was triggering. So we're going to find out a little more. It's too early to say that it's never going to get better. I do believe that offensive units in terms of offensive lines that can stay healthy normally get better at something. They didn't run the ball well and they didn't pass the ball particularly well. They never really gave themselves an opportunity to really get into, a sustained drive. I think the one that they got the field goal on was their longest drive of the game. But I think that if the group stays together, healthy-wise, we'll see some improvement. And I said in the preseason that there is better talent on this team. How it manifests itself into wins and losses, I can't predict. But what they showed you yesterday is just not acceptable. Whether they, go down and lose games by 3 or 4 points, they've got to show better than they did. And then, we go over to the other side of the football, and a lot of the questions or comments that I was getting last night is that Shane Bowen is in above his head. I'm going to say this, folks, that his game plan was not bad at all. Now, there are some tweaks that I would make, and we can get into that. But I think the thing that bedeviled the Giants defense, aside from them playing a lot of plays because the offense couldn't get off the field, is that they had some key third down screw-ups. When I say that, when you play an offense that's as challenging as Washington because you have a quarterback where the play is never dead. So if you get in a 3rd and 5, it can't become a 19-yard gain. It can be a 6-yard gain. It can be even an 8-yard gain. But a 3rd and 5 can't be 19 because that flips the field, right? 3rd and 5 and they get 7, you live to fight another series. 3rd and 5 that gets 19, it starts your death march. Because the big chunk play in one more and then they're in scoring position, which happened on a few of the drives. They've got to be better there.
Carl, I would argue one of the biggest problems that they had yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, their second down defense was atrocious. How many times did the Commanders, because of a penalty or a play by the Giants where it was 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 13 or 1st and 15, and they gave up the first down there. Like
Yeah.
you didn't even play to, you did something or they did something to create an adverse situation, and in one play they got out of it, and suddenly it was 3rd and 2, or suddenly it was just a first down. That was not that was very alarming to me.
And so a lot of things with this defense, bad leverage on the football at times. The game plan, their scheme, I thought was pretty good, pretty sound in terms of how they wanted to operate. But there were some missed tackles. On the one, I think they had a 3rd down late in the game, and the quarterback kept the ball. He runs into his own lineman, and Chauncey Golston's right there. And I don't know if he closed his eyes or what, but all he had to do is just approach the quarterback with the right leverage, and it's a tackle for a loss. But he misses, and the quarterback scampers for, I think, 19 or 20 yards. So there's some leverage, things that are fixable. Now, I do have, my philosophy in terms of when you're playing teams like Washington, or just in general, if you're playing zone defense in the NFL, and this is something I saw that did not happen yesterday. Now, this is not a fatal flaw of anything schematically that Shane Pullen had in his game plan, but I think it's a tweak to what he's going to have to do. You've got to reroute and you've got to jam receivers. You got to pick one or two. Reason I say that, right? And let's say if you're in cover 4 coverage and your tight end, Zach Ertz, is in the slot. He's running a seam. He's running a seam or an option route. So you may not have to go up and press him to kind of give things away, but you have a 5-yard jam area. Once he gets off the football, you've got to disrupt him. Wide receiver, if you're playing zone defense, it doesn't mean you can't disrupt or reroute wide receivers. Zone defense is not an invitation for the wide receiver to get where he's going and then you can cover it. They're just too good in this league to just let them go where they want to go and then think you're going to cover it, because you're always going to be a step or a half a step late. And I think that a lot of that happened with the Giants, and they were fortunate. Debo on Terry McCurlin, he had a key drop. He was just barely able to get there. But sometimes, not even sometimes, all the time, if you're playing zone defense, you have to incorporate reroutes. What do I mean by reroutes, folks? If a guy is running the seam, he should not be able to run a straight line. Somebody should be in front of him at some point where he's got to do this or he's got to do that to get him out of his area. That disruption disrupts the timing of the quarterback. Jaden Daniels wants to get the ball out of his hand fast, and if he can't, then he's moving around. But if you can reroute or jam a wide receiver somewhere in your zone coverage, and they're not where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, it makes it easier for your defensive line, because now the quarterback's going to have to pull it down, or he's going to have to be more patient, and then that's when your sacks are going to come. But you can no longer play zone in this style of defense if you're not going to get hands on wide receivers or reroute. You just can't. You just can't be, even in the umbrella coverages. Guys just can't go where they want to go. Umbrella coverages also requires you to reroute or jam receivers at some point during the process. If you don't, you're going to give up a lot of yards that are unwanted. Now, Shane Bowen took Terry McCurlin out of the game. Terry only had 2 catches for 26 yards, right? But their quarterback was able to get a lot of other players involved. But their best player And if you can hold Terry McGurlin to 26 yards on 2 receptions, you should have a pretty good shot at winning a football game. So there were some things defensive. Dexter Lawrence got tired. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to go back to understand, and me. So if you have whatever you have schematically and you're playing zone or off man, or you have these shell coverages, you can still bake into that some reroutes, right? As guys are
You have to.
coming, right?
You have to. So every defense, if it's zone, there's a vulnerability, right? So if you're playing cover 2, the biggest threat to cover 2 is someone down the seam threatening the safety, and the safety can no longer see that. There's a mandate. Jam number 2, reroute number 2. It's 1 or 2. If you're going to play a press out of 2, if you're going to press the slot or the number 2 receiver, you're going to be at the line of scrimmage. If you're going to reroute him, you're going to position yourself as he's running down the field to either get in his way, or you're going to jam him within that 5 yards. Or if he's running, he's going to see you standing there, and then he's going to have to divert. And that means the quarterback's timing is now going to be off. So, and if you're going to reroute a seam route, you want that to go outside. You don't want him to miss inside.
So you want to get, if you're not, like, if you're off within those 5 yards, you want to get 1-2 stabs at him to get him 3 or 4 yards out wide off his landmark, to have to then reroute to get to his seam, which now gives the safety and everybody else time
and
to
everybody
react.
else to see it. Because if you're rerouting him and the corner's rerouting his guy, they're pushing wide receiver and the tight end to the same area, and both guys are struggling to get back to their routes. And it helps the safety. It also helps you, and it also helps the guy on the backside of your defense. So, when you're playing these shell coverages, it's not an invitation. It should not be an invitation for a wide receiver to just go to his spot, catch the ball, even if it's short of the yard to gain, catch it, turn around, and then start running the football. You've gotta be able to disrupt out of zone defense. That would be my suggestion, my tweak to Shane Bowen's philosophy. And this, I think he did he had a really good scheme. This is my preference because I personally grew up with the understanding of how to disrupt timing of offenses. So I know nothing disrupts timing more than getting a wide receiver away from where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. Some teams are much better when they have personnel that looks like man coverage guys, a bunch of them, right? Then these are the guys that can break out and get to a spot, right? The Giants don't have that. So they've got to be able to make sure that they disrupt route concepts without waiting for them to get to the top of the route before they start to break. That's the type of personnel that they have. If you look at Philadelphia, if you take a look at the Dallas-Philly game, I don't know if there was a single pass down where somebody in Philadelphia's linebacking and defensive backfield was not rerouting or jamming right away receivers going out into their routes. And that helps your pass rush. And when we get to the pass rush yesterday, I think obviously they had three and a half sacks.
3 sacks.
3 sacks, and that should have made a difference in the game. I don't know if any of them did, but they were crucial. Brian Burns with 2. Thibodeau and Carter shared a sack. There were countless pressures there. There's some things there. If you guys looking at the all 22, you'll see where this pass rush can make a difference, but I said it all summer long. If you can't stop the run, you do not earn the right to rush the passer. They gave up 220 yards rushing. 220. I don't know how many of that 200 the quarterback had.
The quarterback had 68 of it.
So you gave up 132 yards to conventional runners and 68 to the quarterback. That's unacceptable. I mean, quarterback's going to do what the quarterback does, but you're getting creased in the run game again. Completely unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, if you take half of his yards and say they were dropped back and then he scrambled.
Mm-hmm.
If you take about a little more than half, let's say you just take 2/3 of it. So, like on a design running plays, he got you for about 30 yards. And then the other 38 that's Jaden Daniels, which is why he is a difference maker. So you tip your cap to that.
Yeah, that's the Lamar Jackson type thing, or the Jaden Daniels type thing now.
Right.
But it's not. Let's take him out of the equation.
Right. The rookie, going around the right end for a touchdown to get that second score to open the game up. Then the 42-yard run. Debo with his 19-yard touchdown run. McNichols averaged 6.3 yards a carry. Eckler averaged 4.3 yards per carry. They were running between the tackles. They were running inside, and it looked like, they'd get 3 and 4 and 5. And that cannot happen, Carl.
No, I'll take the 3s, and I'll even take the 4s. But, the 5s and 9s, the tackles after contact was the thing that really disturbed me. Because and then there were times where, like you said, the running back was getting to the second level untouched, right? So they would dual block Dexter, single somebody else, and then there was a hole. Linebackers couldn't get over, or linebackers are somewhere else. And there are times also where once Muasau came in, he's a really good player in terms of reading and getting where he's supposed to be, but he missed tackles, or he was where he's supposed to be and lost leverage on the football. So I hate the fact that they gave up 200 yards. I hate the fact that they gave up 140 to traditional runs. And I think if you take bad angles and bad leverage out of that, they probably gave up 80 yards. And then if you take out the missed tackles or the yards after contact, they probably got another 30 or 40 yards after contact. So there's opportunity there for real improvement with very minimal adjustment, other than, hey, Chauncey, you just got to you got to keep your eyes open and play outside leverage on this quarterback. You're the defensive end. The quarterback's running the football. He runs into his own guy. Go up the field. Force him inside and make this tackle, or let someone else do it.
Yeah, but like on the touchdown run for Krosky Merritt, he did do his job, but then Flott lost the contain.
Right. It's all a leverage. And Flott was literally running behind his own color jersey. Like I know they know their leverage and replacement rules, meaning that if the end guy gets blocked, the next unblocked guy to the outside now becomes your edge rusher or your edge player. And he's unblocked and he has a solo tackle if he just goes up and sets the edge. At worst, he turns the play back inside. Muasau, perfect read sometimes, oversteps, ball goes inside of him, understeps, ball goes outside of him. And it's just those simple tweaks will make them a better defense, just playing the fundamentals. The other aspect of this is that you cannot play a team like Washington at their own game. They're a finesse offense. You cannot beat finesse offenses with finesse defense. You've got to be able to disrupt it. I learned that lesson playing against the 49ers for so many years. When you try to play it on their terms, you can't. They're always a step ahead. When you disrupt some things that they like to do and the things that you can control, then it becomes a different ballgame. Then you start to play it on your turn. You can't control Jaden Daniels. You can control who he throws it to and how those guys get to where they need to go. You can control your leverage on the football, your gap control. Make sure you're where you're supposed to be, and it makes their offense a little more difficult. But it just looked like it was just too easy. But, look, today is Monday. It's a new week. Sunday's a new opportunity with a new opponent. I want to see where this team improves. I think offensively right now is where people really want to see something from, this offensive line and this quarterback. And it doesn't matter who's at quarterback. Jackson Dart may look.
If the interior of the offensive line is going to get whipped,
correct,
it doesn't matter who the quarterback is.
He's just going to be looking younger and fresher, running around like his hair is on fire too, because they can't protect. So I think they can run their offense if they get their protections right. They're going to see a different opponent. It's not a Dan Quinn style defense. It's a Matt Eberflus defense, which, if we go by what we saw against Philly, they just played shell coverage and kept 8 guys in the box to stop Saquon Barkley. Now, that may not be the case. Giants don't have a running game that's an immediate threat and clear and present danger. They're probably going to blitz. They're going to try to bring some pressure to Russ, and they're probably going to try to do it up to middle because he did show some blitz against Philly. But if they get into man coverage, there should be some opportunities there. New week, new opportunity. We'll see.
Carl, let me go back to the defense though quickly, because you mentioned that, hey, some bad leverage. Hey, look, as soon as Micah McFadden went out of the game, Muasau comes in. They move Ertz right to Muasau, and they beat him for the touchdown. First play.
Bad leverage.
Right. So we talk about the bad leverage, some missed tackles, and so on and so forth. But for the fan that's watching this, and we have some great people that have subscribed to this podcast, and we encourage you to subscribe and leave your comments and everything else. There's going to be some fans that say, but Carl, you guys were talking about this last year about leverage and, not placing the right shoulder in the right place and not, like in Flott's case, replacing. And some would say, well, maybe some of the guys just aren't good enough for what you're talking about because it looked the same. Now they have changed some of the personnel, but they have to be more sound because these little things they'll eat you up each and every week.
Well, yeah, and so what I would say to that is you're not wrong. It does look like it did last year to a certain degree, but it was just a different play every other big play. It wasn't the same thing they were hitting them with, and that's a little bit of what Washington does well. They did not allow the Giants to really get set and stop one thing because the Giants, just couldn't stop the one thing when they needed to. So, they corrected. I'm sure they told Muasau, the next time you see Hurts out into the flat, if you're inside position, don't give it up, right? Even if he goes outside, it never came back again. It was something different, right? So this is the game you wash. You understand what you need to do. Now, if it becomes a pattern of guys playing with bad leverage, then we have an issue. I think these are correctable, and I think they will be corrected. I would love, and this is not a Shane Bowen thing, but for me, I would love to see them be more physical with wide receivers. And this is not bump and run, folks. These are little subtle things, right? If you're going to be a zone defense, you've got to understand where your vulnerabilities are, and you've got to mitigate those sooner in the process than at the end of the offensive process, which means you've got to be able to, play with different leverage. You've got to be able to reroute. You've got to be able to disrupt when called for. And you got to be able to change it up so the quarterback can't see when he goes off to the sideline. And as Dak Prescott said, well, they're jamming CD with outside leverage. Well, the next time CD gets a free release and then somebody else jams him with inside leverage. You've got to be, that's the beautiful part about playing zone defense, that you can do things that will give a quarterback different looks and will change up the timing of a play, but doing nothing assures you that you're going to be a step behind, and you're going to have to rely on either a bad pass or just your defensive line creating a bad throw. But in order to help that defensive line, you've got to be able to understand your coverage and understand where you're vulnerable, and then disrupt that. You got to disrupt it, is my opinion. Now, if they feel like they got the athletes that can get from point A to point B before the receiver does, because you know what your coverage is, good luck. I've just seen it too many times where the receivers are just too good. You're going to be a half a step late, even your best guys. So that would be my suggestion when they get in some of their zone schematics. You got to get hands on receivers. And then, these bunch formations, another opportunity for you. You have to get hands on a receiver early. Whoever the up guy is on the line of scrimmage in the offensive bunch, you got to disrupt it so that, when you start to switch these guys off, it's clear who's got who. But when everybody's off and these guys are running their own little pick routes, you can't sort it out. But if you can disrupt it, it sorts itself out, because
now you're
guys have got to
dictating
get
the
where
terms.
they got to go.
Now
Correct.
you're dictating the terms.
Correct. And receivers now feel like, heck, I got to get to where I got to go. I can't get cute here. But when everybody's off, they're looking at, okay, we're going to just run this little, wheel route or over route or whatever they may want to do, switch routes, and you don't know who's got who. When you dictate the terms, you can predetermine who has who, and it disrupts how they and the timing of how they want to run plays.
The moral of the story, Carl Banks and the Giants of the 80s playing Joe Montana and the Niners of the 80s. If you play on their terms, no bueno. Make it on your terms. And if it doesn't work, at least you went out on your terms.
And you'll see a much different team. And look, it's going to be different with Dak Prescott. He is not Jaden Daniels. They don't even have the same style offense. They're not going to be hard to find. They're players. But CeeDee Lamb ain't going to drop.
He ain't dropping 4 passes this week.
No, and 3 of them were key. That ain't happening. And I think we should be feeling like Malik Nabers ain't going to drop his key passes either. But you have to be able to protect your quarterback. Micah Parsons is no longer in the building, right? They have to get pressure. They should have to get pressure by bringing an extra guy in a blitz. You should be able to say, as a group, we can handle 5-on-5s or 5-on-4s. If they're gonna if they want to get to our quarterback, we got to make them blitz. But we want to be able to give Russ enough time to go through more than one option. And then if they blitz, that's when you make them pay.
Carl, you've always talked about this since we've been doing the show and basically since I've known you, going back to the late 80s. If your interior showed a lot of vulnerability this week, guess where Dallas is going to attack? And until you prove you can stop it, you're going to get it every single week.
Every single time. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so they're going to have to prove it.
How do we like to end this thing?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Oh,
Believe in Giants.
We're not ending it yet. Sorry, I prematurely ended it because we got to thank FanDuel. Believe in Giants presented by FanDuel. We appreciate FanDuel. And we'll be back later in the week when we do a deep breakdown into the Giants and Cowboys. And I got because I'm here in New Jersey, I got my handmade mug. But you can go to the Believe shop and buy one, a real one. All right, now we can do it. How do we like to end it?
Tell a friend to tell a friend. Believe in Giants.